Welcome back to Open Line. So far, we've had a great conversation with Ameilia Luna, who is with the Legal Aid Society based out of Murfreesboro. Tonight's topic is about legal options and advice for victims of domestic violence. We were talking before the break about different resources that are available, but I imagine as our community continues to grow and more people come into the area, it's not always English language speakers. So if you is somebody that is in a different linguistic situation, what are their options?
It can be more challenging for them, obviously, because of the language barrier. But Legal Aid Society, we have translators at the Legal Aid Society. Also, if they're in a situation where the police were called, then translators should be offered for them to be able to communicate with them. But it is definitely it's a huge barrier for them because oftentimes that since they can't speak the language, it's hard to communicate. They may be scared, if they don't have citizenship, or they may be concerned that if they call, then that for help, then that might be looked at and they might get in trouble because of that. And so I think it's more difficult for them to feel comfortable to contact us. So we try to do community education to let people know that it's okay, we're here to help you. Whether or not you have citizenship status or documentation, you have a right to get help. You have a right to not be abused, and you can get help from us. You can get help from the police department to keep you safe. You can get an order of protection just as anybody can. It doesn't matter. And so just trying to let people know that so that they're not afraid to call. And oftentimes abusers will use that documentation status against them. Like if you call the police, then you could be deported, or you might lose your visa. And if they are coming on a spousal visa or one that's tied to the abuser, the abuser might use that against them. But if they are a victim of abuse, there may be ways that they can get citizenship because of the abuse, so that can't be used against them. And we have staff at the Legal Aid Society that help with survivors of abuse that don't have documentation, to help them overcome their barriers, help them to get safety, so that the abuser don't use that against them to keep them in the abusive situation. So we want them to reach out to us, and we want to be able to help them, and we're able to communicate with them. So,
and just to be clear, if someone does call in, even if those excuses are made, it's not like they're going to suddenly have the police called on them or anything like that.
No, not at all. So if they call us, we would only talk to them about getting safe and how to get safe, and the police are not going to go and arrest them. And if they go to court for the order of protection, the police are not going to show up at court because of their documentation status. Not at all. So they can get safe through the order of protection. They can get safe when they're talking with us. We're a safe spot. And the domestic violence shelters, same thing. They will help victims of abuse no matter if they speak English or not, what their citizenship status is, that they can get help.
Absolutely. Just out of curiosity, how does Tennessee compare as a state versus maybe some of the others when it comes to domestic violence? Do we see higher rates?
So in Tennessee, we see there's about in 2020, there was 69,000 domestic violence offenses that occurred in Tennessee. And the statistics breakdown of women who are victims, about 75% of women are victims of abuse in Tennessee, while men are about 28%. So more women present as victims than men. And about half of the crimes against people in Tennessee were domestic violence related. So we've got a lot of domestic violence going on in Tennessee, unfortunately. But there are things in place to protect folks, so that's why we want to let them know about that. Another statistic that's pretty shocking to me, too, is that 1 in 4 women and 1 in 4 men experience physical, sexual, or stalking violence in their lifetime by a partner. So, if you think about just, your friends, 4 friends, one of you has experienced that. And there's more than 10 million men and women that are physically abused annually. So that's a lot of people. And so domestic abuse touches everyone, every economic status and social status, everybody. And it's a huge problem. As we are working to address that and stop that, but there's much work to be done too, to just keep people safe.
You used the example to illustrate, and I'm so glad you did, about the friends, but that made me think of the question, if you might suspect that a friend of yours or an acquaintance of yours or a loved one of yours is going through an experience like this, what is the best way to address what could be obviously a tough conversation?
Yeah. Again, if you don't know anything about it, look for resources first before you go to talk to that person. Like I said, our website has a lot of good information on it. Number one thing is just being supportive, as Rob talked about, just, and not in an attacking way, like, your partner's terrible, why are you with them? But, again, we have that 15 signs somebody's violent. Maybe say, hey, take a look at this. I saw this, and, I care about you, I love you, you're my friend, and I'm worried about you. So I'm here to support you. Take a look at this, and this is why I'm worried, because I see these things and I see these things happening to you. And then just letting them know that you're there to help and be supportive.
Absolutely. You were mentioning earlier how this can just impact a whole cross-section of life. It really doesn't matter what your status is. In fact, to kind of reinforce that, saw a Tennessee Lookout article that talked about how often a lot of rural counties can have higher rates of domestic violence even than some more urban counties, which might even take some viewers by surprise. But it sounds like, what you said is true, is that there isn't really silos of who this impacts.
It impacts everyone. And just being aware, being educated, making sure to, that you're educating your children, educating your friends, because too, if you are a child that has grown up in a domestic violence household, you may not realize that this is a crime and it's not appropriate. So having the education in schools on what's a healthy, safe relationship, your friends, educating them, being supportive of them, that maybe their relationship's not safe, but just keeping in mind, again, if you grew up in you may not realize that this is healthy and unsafe, and what resources are available.
We hinted, just hinted, really got into a lot of the legal aspects of getting out of a situation like this, especially if someone's married, or especially if you're choosing to file charges of some sort. It may be intimidating for somebody in that type of situation. So is that something that the Legal Aid Society can really step in and help with?
Yeah, if you're a victim, you can ask for an order of protection. We could help you petition. The domestic violence programs can help you petition, so that you have someone kind of helping you along. But it is a legal process, and it can often be frustrating. And when you file the petition, like I talked about, you fill out a form that says what happens, and that's going to get served on the abuser. Well, if they can't find the abuser, or it takes a while it has to be physically served on them, you may have a court date set and then they can't get them served, so it gets continued again. Then they get served and then they may come to court and they may want to get an attorney, so it could be continued again. And so there is a legal process to go through, and it can often be, sometimes be frustrating. It's scary. Like, you're going to court, you're going to have to say all these bad things that happened, and this person did these bad things to you, and that can be scary. Facing the person who you've loved at some point, and may still, these bad things are happening and you need protection because of that. So it can be scary, but yes, Legal Aid can help with that. We also help with divorces, if you're in an abusive situation and it's severe and ongoing, to help get you out of that situation. We can't help everyone. We had last year we had 21,455 requests for help, and as I said earlier, we're 8 offices. There's 37 attorneys. We can't help all 21,000 people, so we have to sometimes. We unfortunately have to turn people away, and we can't always help everyone, but we try to help as many as we can to help them to get safe, to get a divorce or get an order of protection, or hook you up with the resources, inform you about other resources that may be able to help you if we're not able to help you. And
is one of those resources financial, like if somebody's worried about, because obviously legal costs can mount. So are there resources out there for people?
Yeah, there are. I mean, there are in the things that I talked about, Families First, food stamps, housing. But unfortunately in Tennessee, there are no free divorces. And so if you want to get a divorce, if we're able to represent you, then we can do that for free. So we have wonderful attorneys who volunteer at Legal Aid Society that we can link people up for those. But it's not like the public defender's office. So sometimes people that, if they can't afford it, they may not be able to get a divorce, or you can represent yourself, but it is a very difficult process too. So there's not a lot of resources for the legal divorce, unfortunately.
You mentioned too that obviously there can be delays, there can be continuances. I'm sure there have to be people in your office reminding people that anybody that's ever been in a legal situation before, it can move slowly.
Yes.
And frustratingly so.
Yes, yeah. I mean, just for example, for a divorce, if you have minor children, there's a 90-day waiting period before you can get divorced. So from the time you file it, you have to wait at least 90 days. If there's no children, it's a 60-day waiting period. So for a divorce, it's going to take you at least 60 to 90 days. And that's if everyone agrees and you guys can agree on the paperwork, present it to the court, and get a quick court date. But that doesn't happen, and lots of times when they're contested, it could be a year, it could be 2, it could be more. It just depends, because there's lots of processes you have to go to if you can't reach an agreement. So it can be very frustrating to a lot of folks, unfortunately.
Absolutely. I want to bring Tony into the conversation. Tony, thanks for calling into OpenLine. Go ahead.
Hey, this is Tony. I had a minor in psychology at Southern Illinois University, Carbondale. And I got relatives in Carbondale, Illinois, and Sikeston, Missouri, Paducah, Kentucky, and Nashville. Quiet, buddy. But anyway, so what I was saying is, the psychology of the thing is really bad, because a lot of times, they're living with a person and they don't know what to do. It's really a tough time for everybody involved. So, and a lot of times the police don't like to go to domestic situations because they can, they'll turn on them. Like, they'll be fighting with each other and all of a sudden they'll turn on a cop, which is weird. So, I don't know. I think both of you are you seem a very reasonable person. I'm looking at the man on the left and the woman on the right. You're both blondes too, And I don't know, man. I think, I don't know what to say. I just think that everybody should sort of just, take it easy, take a breath. And the problem is, if you are living with a person that's beating on you or something, you definitely have to leave. That's all I have to say.
Tony, thanks for the call. We appreciate it. I mean, it's, obviously we have talked a lot tonight about how it can be a tricky situation and can be a tough decision to make. But it seems like a theme that we've gotten into time and time again is it really has to be the victim that decides. You can have people in your life that says, hey, I'm noticing this, but it seems in a lot of situations the victim has to kind of make that decision that it's their time.
Yeah, and it is, as Tony said, very mentally stressful living in that situation, and helping to let the victim know of the resources that's available, so that she can see that that's a choice that she can make. It's something that she's able to do, because it is difficult financially, as we talked about, mentally stressed. If you've got children, that's a whole nother layer of dynamic of things that the victims have to think about. So, but being supportive as we've talked about, providing resources and letting them know about things, you know, educating them, trying to get them to seek education and counseling, which will then help them go from being a victim to a survivor. And that's the goal, is we want to transition into being a survivor. So, but it's hard, you know, as we've talked about, there's lots of stumbling blocks and things that it's unfortunately, like Tony says, you can't just leave. You know, I mean, that's the goal, and you want to do that. But you want to, you know, let them know of all the resources so that hopefully they can get to that point where they can leave.
Absolutely. Now, we only have about 10 minutes left with Amy, so if you have a call, you have a comment, you want to call in, the number here is on your screen. In the meantime, we've got to pay some bills. We'll be right back.